The day she left, the world seemed to stop. The air in the house was heavy, thick with the absence of her voice, her laughter, her presence. I had spent decades nurturing her, raising her through sickness and tears, watching her grow with pride and devotion. And in one silent morning, she was gone. I wandered through the rooms as if seeking signs that she had never existed, touching the objects she had left behind, hoping for some miracle that would bring her back. The bed she had slept in, neatly made, seemed to mock me, empty and cold. The kitchen smelled of stale food, yet I could almost imagine her presence there, her small hand brushing mine while helping to prepare meals. Tears began to flow uncontrollably as memories flooded in. I remembered her first steps, the words she spoke when she learned to talk, the nights she cried when dreams scared her, clutching my hands tightly. I remembered the times she came home triumphant from school, telling me stories with excitement, eyes sparkling, oblivious to the troubles that had burdened my own life. Every sacrifice I had made, every sleepless night, every worry, every effort to provide comfort and security felt suddenly meaningless. I cried until my body ached, until my chest burned with the weight of grief. Each tear was a sharp reminder that love alone could not hold someone who wanted to leave. And yet, beneath the sorrow, beneath the anguish, I felt a strange, gnawing guilt. Had I failed as a mother? Had I been too strict, too lenient, too busy, too tired? I replayed every argument, every word spoken and unspoken, looking for signs I could have changed, moments I could have acted differently. But life does not provide answers. The silence of the house was deafening. The empty chairs, the untouched dishes, the closed doors. Everything was a reminder that the person I had devoted my life to had chosen another path, one without me. Days passed in a haze. I would wake, hoping it had all been a nightmare, only to find reality unchanged. I walked to the garden, seeking solace among the flowers I had planted together, touching the petals, imagining her smile, her voice. I began writing in a journal, pouring every ounce of sorrow, anger, love, and hope onto paper. Letters I would never send, words that would never be read, became my therapy, my bridge between despair and resilience. Nights were worse. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I relived the moments of her departure repeatedly, feeling the ache in my chest, the emptiness in my heart, the betrayal that cut deeper than any wound I had ever known. Sleep became a stranger. I cried silently, whispered her name, and begged the universe for answers, for understanding, for mercy. And slowly, painfully, I began to realize that grief, as crushing as it was, could also be transformative. In the solitude, in the pain, I began noticing subtle shifts within myself, the way my breath calmed when I tended the garden, the way my heart softened when I wrote letters I would never send, the way small acts of care for myself became a declaration that my life still had value. I began to remember not just the sorrow, but the love. The mornings I woke early to make her breakfast, the nights I stayed awake when she was sick, the countless lessons I had taught, the hugs, the laughter, the joy. Those memories, though painful now, were proof of a love so deep it could never be erased. Days became weeks, weeks became months. I established routines, morning walks, journaling, cooking meals, tending the garden. Slowly, I allowed small joys to enter my life. The scent of freshly baked bread, the sun warming my face, the flutter of a bird outside the window. I began reconnecting with old friends, distant relatives, neighbours who had quietly observed my sorrow. Human connection, even small and imperfect, reminded me that life did not end with her departure. I discovered the power of forgiveness, not for her sake, but for mine. Whispering her name in quiet moments, acknowledging the betrayal, then letting go, became a practice of liberation. I could cry and smile in the same breath. I could grieve and also remember the beauty of life. I wrote long letters, telling her all the pain she caused, all the love I had given, all the hope I still carried for her. These letters were never sent, yet they brought a strange sense of relief, a cleansing of the soul. Nights remained lonely, but I began speaking aloud, telling stories of our past, whispering lessons learned, reflecting on the depth of motherhood, the paradox of love and independence. Solitude became my companion, grief became my teacher, and memory became my bridge to understanding. I began appreciating small acts of self-care, reading books, painting, cooking, tending the garden with renewed devotion. Life, though altered, continued. And gradually, I began to realize that the strength I had cultivated over decades had not diminished. It had grown, reinforced by the fires of loss and sorrow. I was not alone, not in spirit, not in resilience. Even in the absence of the person I loved most, I discovered that my heart, though wounded, remained capable of enduring love. My life, though scarred by betrayal, was still mine to live. Each day I rose, walked through the house, touched the objects she once cherished, wrote letters I would never send, and allowed grief, hope, and love to coexist. And in that coexistence I found quiet courage. I had survived abandonment. I had survived betrayal. I had survived the deepest pain a mother could endure, and as tears fell silently, I whispered to myself, I am enough, I am strong, I am still here. The days grew longer, yet the emptiness persisted. Every corner of the house whispered her absence. But in that silence, I began to notice subtler truths, truths that pain alone could not reveal. I realized that grief, though unrelenting, was teaching me lessons I had never learned through joy. It taught patience, endurance, and the fragile beauty of human vulnerability. I sat by the window for hours, watching the world outside continue, indifferent to my heartbreak. Birds flew freely, unaware of loss, and the wind danced through the trees, carrying a freedom I had once hoped to preserve for her. And slowly, I understood that freedom is a gift, not a punishment, even if it comes at the cost of separation. I remembered the nights I had stayed awake, comforting her when the world scared her, the countless tears I had wiped from her cheeks, the hugs I had offered unconditionally. These acts of love were not diminished by her departure. They were proof of the depth of my heart, the strength of my spirit, and the unwavering nature of maternal devotion. One evening, as twilight fell, I sat in the garden, hands pressed into the cool soil, breathing deeply. I allowed my tears to flow freely, not holding back, not judging myself for the sorrow. Each drop seemed to carry a weight, a memory, a lesson, and as they fell, I felt a strange lightness, as though my heart was releasing its burden. I began speaking aloud, recounting my grief to the empty house. I loved you, I whispered. I gave all I could. I hoped, I nurtured, I waited, and still you left. Yet I am here. I am alive. I am strong. The words, though quiet, resonated with power. They reminded me that though loss had marked my life, it had not defeated me. Over the following weeks, I began exploring life with renewed intention. I tended the garden meticulously, planted new flowers and nurtured plants as if each bloom were a small victory over despair. I painted, capturing the subtle colours of dawn and dusk, pouring emotion into strokes that mirrored my inner journey. I wrote extensively, letters to her I would never send, reflections on my life, meditations on grief and love. These writings became sacred, a chronicle of a heart battered but unbroken. Slowly, human connection returned. I reached out to neighbours, old friends and relatives, discovering that even amidst sorrow, compassion and kindness were still present. Conversations, however brief, reminded me that life extends beyond the walls of the home, that relationships continue in new forms, and that the human heart is resilient enough to love again, even if in a different way. Nights remained a test. The emptiness of the house was profound, and memories of her laughter, her voice, her presence echoed loudly. Yet, I had discovered tools to navigate this solitude: journaling, painting, meditation, and acceptance. I learned to honour grief without letting it dominate, to remember without letting sorrow consume, to love without clinging. And in this delicate balance, a transformation took place. I realised that abandonment, betrayal and loss do not define a person. They test, refine, and reveal the enduring strength within. The very act of surviving, of continuing to rise each day, was a testament to resilience more powerful than any joy or sorrow could provide. I began celebrating the small victories, mornings when I felt light-hearted, afternoons of creativity and focus, evenings of quiet reflection and gratitude. Even simple acts, like making tea for myself or watering the flowers, became acts of reclaiming life, reclaiming agency, and affirming that my existence still held meaning and purpose. I reflected often on forgiveness, not as an absolution of her choices, but as a liberation of my own heart. Whispering her name, acknowledging betrayal, then letting it go, became a daily practice. In this, I discovered peace. I discovered freedom. I discovered that my capacity to love and endure had not diminished. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled across the garden, I realised that I had begun to rebuild my heart from the ruins of grief. Pain still existed, but it no longer controlled me. Loneliness was still present, but it no longer defined me. The loss of her presence had taught me the magnitude of maternal love, the necessity of acceptance, and the power of self-resilience. I began envisioning a future where life was not dictated by absence, but enriched by presence. Presence in my own being. Presence in the relationships I nurtured. Presence in the beauty of creation. And presence in the quiet moments of reflection. I walked through the rooms of the house with intention, touching objects that held memory, and whispering gratitude for all the moments we had shared. Tears came, yes, but they were not solely for sorrow. They were also for understanding, for release, for acknowledgement of a love that transcended loss. And in that understanding, hope emerged, fragile, yet undeniable. I realised that while her path had diverged from mine remained vibrant, meaningful, and full of potential. I had endured the depths of heartbreak, and yet I was standing. I had felt the sharp edge of betrayal, and yet I had learned to navigate it. I had cried oceans of grief, and yet I could now look forward, even with trembling hands, to moments of joy, connection, and self-discovery. In the quiet of the house, surrounded by memories and shadows of the past, I whispered to myself, I am still here. I am still whole. I am still capable of love, of hope, of life. And as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt the first true sense of peace in months. A peace born not from the return of what was lost, but from the recognition of my own enduring strength, resilience, and the unshakable truth that life, though scarred, continues. What do you think hurts a mother the most when her daughter leaves? Share your thoughts in the comments.